Kyogre and Groudon are probably the most beloved and well-designed legendary duo in the entire Pokemon franchise. They are perfect counterparts to one another, and while most legendaries from older games tend to get worse and less competitively relevant over time, these two are always relevant, still defining the Uber's metagame to this day. And they have had a long-standing competitive rivalry. They are actually quite evenly matched, both metagame defining in different ways. And the question of which is better often fluctuates from game to game, or depends on different factors. They also both received the incredible Primal forms in the Generation 6 games. Primal Groudon and Kyogre are some of the most overpowered Pokemon we have ever seen in the history of the franchise. So who is better overall, Kyogre or Groudon? Let's start from the beginning. In Gen 3, Kyogre and Groudon were born, and their big gimmick was weather. Both of these Pokemon have weather setting abilities. Kyogre has Drizzle, which sets permanent rain on the field, and Groudon has Drought, which sets permanent sun on the field. These make them natural rivals, and on Uber's teams in Gen 3, you are often building around one or the other. Kyogre can be used alongside Pokemon with Swift Swim like Ludicolo or Kingdra to grant them double speed in the rain. You can also use the move Thunder, which is an incredible rain synergy, as Thunder is perfectly accurate in the rain, a significant buff from its usual 70 accuracy. Groudon, on the other hand, sets Sun on the field, which boosts the damage of Fire-type moves, allows Solar Beam to bypass its charging effect, which is extremely good, and enables Chlorophyll Pokemon like Exeggutor and Shiftry to have double speed. The stats on these Pokemon are absolutely incredible. Kyogre is a monstrous special attacker with 150 base special attack and an unbelievable 140 special defense as well, and respectable stats everywhere else. Groudon, on the other hand, is a physical attacker with pretty much mirrored stats. It has 150 base attack and 140 physical defense. You can see how these are completely designed to be rivals to one another. Even their stats are flipped versions of themselves. In Generation 3, it is hard to say which of these two is better. They are both pretty much equally metagame defining. And when I say which is better, I don't mean in a direct one-on-one, because Kyogre would probably have an advantage there. I mean in a general sense, who is the better Pokemon in the metagame overall? Kyogre makes Thunder into the best move in the game in Gen 3. Thunder is unbelievable in rain, and especially with teammates like Latios and Deoxys Attack and Jirachi to abuse that Thunder. Kyogre also shields Steel types from Fire type damage, because rain reduces fire damage on all Pokemon, and that makes Metagross and Forretress incredibly broken. Kyogre teams tend to be more aggressive in Gen 3, as Swift Swim is an incredible way to take advantage of rain and apply offensive pressure. Groudon teams tend to be more defensive. Rather than going all in on Sun synergy with Chlorophyll Pokemon, they tend to be more anti-rain teams. Sun has the effect of nerfing Thunder to only have 50 accuracy, and that is kind of the crux of these teams, cutting that option that rain teams are built around and completely destroying it. So there's a clear weather war happening here. Both Kyogre and Groudon aiming to establish their weather and keep it up, eliminating the enemy's weather setter for good. It's incredibly close, but in Generation 3, in the debut game of these two Pokemon, I would probably say that Groudon teams tend to be more consistent in high-level play. Sun shuts down rain teams much more than rain shuts down sun teams, if that makes sense. And Groudon itself is also an incredible defensive Pokemon. A mono ground typing is fantastic. It is a check to any physical attacker of all time, and it's able to run mixed coverage. Running Overheat to be able to hit Steel types is extremely powerful, since that is sun boosted and the high base power will make up for your lower than average special attack. Groudon is very effective at spreading paralysis. Hidden Power Ghost is a great way to threaten Latios, and overall, I think that Groudon feels like the better Pokemon in Gen 3 Ubers. Personally, I think it enables more teams and is more useful as a defensive piece. In Generation 4, these two are just as metagame defining, but things are very different now, because the physical special split has happened, meaning that all types can have both physical and special moves. This doesn't actually impact the Pokemon themselves that much, but it impacts the Pokemon that synergize with them significantly. There are also some new metagame defining items to take advantage of, and Kyogre really benefited from the addition of Choice Scarf to the game. Choice Scarf is an item that grants you 1.5 times speed, with the drawback of only being able to select the first move you execute until you switch out, so you're locked into the move. But Kyogre could take advantage of Choice Scarf and Water Spout for one of the most classic Ubers concepts ever, the Choice Scarf Water Spout. Water Spout is a move that has more power, the more HP you have. So at full HP, it is a 150 base power, which is absolutely incredible. Thanks to the Choice Scarf boosting your speed, Kyogre's Water Spout might just be the most central source of damage that you need a response to in Gen 4 Ubers, and it would be the case in many Ubers formats in the future too. Kyogre's great set variety remained as well, and Choice Spect was a new option that enhanced Kyogre greatly, granting a special attack boost instead of speed, just allowing it to deal as much immediate damage as possible. Bulkier sets and Calm Mind sets also still had their value. But Groudon did benefit from new Gen 4 changes as well. Groudon gained access to Stealth Rock, the new best move in the entire game that sets a hazard on the field, dealing damage to the enemy on switch-in based on their rock weakness. This was an incredible new utility option for Groudon. This Pokemon also matches up quite well into some new threats. Dialga is the new king of Ubers in the eyes of many, a fantastic new Pokemon, and the fact that you threaten that with super effective damage and Stab Earthquake is a big deal. Kyogre, on the other hand, gets kind of beat by the two big new legendaries, those being Palkia and Dialga. Dragon Claw is now a physical attack, so Groudon can threaten all these powerful new dragons for pretty significant damage. There's, Palkia, Giratina Origin, and also Rayquaza, who existed last gen, but is just as prevalent here. So I think that option is very significant. Something else to say about Kyogre, though, is that the Swift Swim Pokemon got even better in Gen 4 than they were in Gen 3. In particular, because Water-type moves can be physical now, Pokemon like Kabutops with Stab Waterfall boosted by Rain is significantly better than it was in Gen 3. And Kabutops was already quite good in Gen 3 Ubers, but now it can take advantage of its physical stab in the rain to turn into an absolute monster. I think that overall you would have to give it to Kyogre in Gen 4 Ubers, with it benefiting from so many of the new tools, as well as the Pokemon it enables, with Swift Swim becoming so much stronger now. Groudon does have the benefit of that incredible defensive typing, matching up well against all the dragons, and having Stealth Rock. These are some significant new tools, and Groudon is incredibly metagame defining. The difference between them is not that much, but I think Kyogre here has the slight edge in Generation 4 Ubers. In Gen 5, not much changed about these two. The metagame around them changed significantly, with Arceus being legal in Gen 5 Ubers, as well as a lot of new Dream World abilities changing things significantly, like Ho-Oh receiving Regenerator. But these two are operating much the same. Not many new tools to speak of, no new ability or anything. And for similar reasons, I think Kyogre is a little bit better thanks to its immediately threatening Water Spout set, which is one of the most central offensive sets in the format, and also enabling a lot of really powerful Swift Swim Pokemon. So I would also give it to Kyogre in Generation 5. In Generation 6, a significant mechanical change was put in place. The nerf to weather abilities. Weather setting abilities used to be permanent in the older games, but from Gen 6 onwards, this was changed. And if you send in a Pokemon with Drizzle, the rain that they set only lasts for 5 turns, or 8 turns if they are holding the Damp Rock. Just like manually clicking Rain Dance is the same. And this applies to all weather setting abilities. So this was obviously a significant nerf to both Kyogre and Groudon. But to make up for this, they gave both of these Pokemon new Primal forms, and these forms are absolutely insane. The only requirement to achieve these forms is that they hold the respective orbs. Kyogre needs the blue orb, Groudon needs the red orb. And it's well worth that small cost, because look at these stats. Look at Primal Kyogre's stats. 180 base special attack is unbelievable. 160 special defense, and even a massive attack stat. So Primal Kyogre can be a physical attacker now. That's a big deal. Primal Groudon is much the same, with the same stats flipped. 180 attack, 160 defense, 150 special attack. And their abilities are absolutely incredible as well. They have their own proprietary rain effects and sun effects. Primordial Sea sets heavy rain on the field, which is basically the same as rain, but it takes priority over all other weather effects, so it will consume whatever weather is active at the time and replace it with heavy rain. And heavy rain is permanent while Primal Kyogre is on the field. It only goes away when Kyogre Primal switches out of the field. Heavy Rain also has an additional effect, and that is that Fire-type moves will have no effect whatsoever. Instead of having their damage nerfed like they do in regular rain, they just evaporate. The rain is so heavy that fire cannot exist. Primal Groudon also has a similar broken weather setting ability in the form of Desolate Land, which sets harsh sunlight on the field. And harsh sunlight has all the same effects that sun has, and much like harsh rain, it is permanent until Primal Groudon switches out. Harsh sunlight also causes all water type attacks to fail, effectively granting Primal Groudon an immunity to water type attacks. And between these two Pokemon, this is the main advantage of Primal Groudon. you'll notice that this Pokemon has a ground fire typing, meaning it's ×4 weak to water. But its ability grants an effective immunity to water type moves because harsh sunlight evaporates water from existence. It turns out that ground fire typing is absolutely amazing if you get rid of your biggest weakness, and the only weakness Primal Groudon has is to ground itself. Primal Groudon is quite significantly better than Primal Kyogre. Even though Primal Kyogre is amazing and it's a good counter to Primal Groudon, it's the only thing that can overtake its harsh sunlight with its heavy rain. Heavy rain can overtake harsh sunlight and vice versa. But Primal Groudon easily takes the cake here with 2 fantastic stab types, an unbelievably diverse move pool, defensive and offensive sets, and very little that can actually threaten the guy because it's only weak to a single type. This is the best Pokemon in Gen 6 and 7 Ubers by far. It's not even close. Primal Groudon is on another level of power compared to every other legendary in the game in these 2 generations. And I would have to instantly give Primal Groudon the point for both Gen 6 and 7. So there you go, folks. 2 points in the favor of Groudon for this primal form, which seriously soared to heights never before seen. In Generation 8, these 2 are back to normal. The primal forms that once absolutely demolished Ubers are no longer in the game. And it's kind of incredible to see these 2 still being top tier Pokemon in Gen 8 Ubers, a fairly recent generation. These 2 have stood the test of time incredibly well. They've barely received any buffs or overhauls or anything, just in their original intended way. Still incredibly powerful in Gen 8 Ubers. And in fact, they've both been nerfed, as of course, their weather setting abilities are no longer permanent, and those harsh sunlight and heavy rain setting abilities no longer exist. In the most recent Gen 8 Ubers viability ranking I could find, both of these Pokemon, Kyogre and Groudon, are ranked in S-, considered evenly matched. Groudon got some of the more noteworthy buffs, with access to Precipice Blades now ever since Gen 7 and 6, a harder hitting ground stab option, and also Heat Crash for a physical fire type option that benefits from drought, of course. Ground Stab with complementary rock coverage and sun boosted fire type damage as well that also scales based on weight, which is convenient because Groudon is the heaviest thing on the planet, is pretty amazing physical coverage. And this is threatening to a wide array of different things, on top of being an incredible defensive Pokemon. Groudon is pretty sturdy against Necrozma Duskmane, who is a very central presence. And although the Swift Swim Pokemon that once loved Kyogre as a teammate are not what they once were, since rain is no longer permanent and therefore less of a all-in game plan to build around, Kyogre still benefits from the rain it itself sets and is dishing out some serious damage with Scarf Water Spout as it always has. And this has the new benefit of outrunning and threatening to one-hit KO Calyrex Shadow Rider, the new superstar of Gen 8 Ubers. And that's a pretty significant thing to be able to do. Ever since Gen 6 and 7, Kyogre also has the new Origin Pulse option for hard-hitting Water Stab, which is very good. Spec sets are still incredible at breaking. Carmine Rest Talk sets are a good way to break through enemies. I don't know. I think that in Gen 8 it's a bit of a cop-out, but I think they're even. I don't know who's better here. I can't quite say. They're ranked in the same tier. They're both great in different ways, and I think I would give them both a point for Gen 8. And finally, here we are in Gen 9, the modern times, where Kyogre and Groudon are both still competitively relevant Pokemon in Ubers, with all of the incredibly powerful new legendaries present. These 2 have stood the test of time better than any other legendary duo for sure. It's kind of crazy. But one has suffered more than the other here. Groudon unfortunately has to contend with an all-new sun setter in the format to take its lunch, and that is Koraidon. Koraidon is the all-new Pokemon from Scarlet version, the box legendary that has an ability that sets sun and also boosts its attack in the sun. It's incredibly fast, it's dragon fighting type, it hits really hard, it's got an unbelievable physical move pool. It's the best Pokemon in the game since the Miraidon ban. It doesn't mean Groudon is completely outclassed by it though. I mean, Koraidon's more of a fast offensive threat. It's way more dominant, way easy to fit on teams, way more preferable most of the time, but Groudon is still that bulky ground type, and it got some buffs. Groudon has access to Will-O-Wisp now, which is a fantastic new status option. That's really, really good to be honest. And you also have Spikes as an additional entry hazard to complement your Stealth Rock. In the early days of Gen 9 Ubers, when these 2 first became available, I probably would have given it to Groudon just because it was a really good response to a lot of stuff in the metagame at the time. But as things have developed, I think that it's hard not to give it to Kyogre in Generation 9. This role of being a rain setter is still pretty much exclusive to Kyogre in Ubers. There's no new legendary taking its lunch and becoming a new rain setter. Kyogre is the only Pokemon that can do this. And setting rain also has the anti-meta effect of disabling Koraidon's weather effect, disabling the attack boost it gets in the sun. And you also disable the photosynthesis boost that all of these new Paradox Pokemon receive in the sun. And that's a big deal. So Kyogre is a fairly good response to some of the most central strategies in Gen 9 Ubers, and it's still Kyogre. It's still got the amazing stats, the Scarf Water Spout, the Carmine sets, the Bulky sets, the Specs Breaker sets. Kyogre is currently ranked in the A+ tier in Gen 9 Ubers, which is incredibly admirable for a Pokemon released all the way back in Generation 3. And it looks like, according to my little ranking system here, that these two are evenly matched at 4 and 4. What a world. Because I couldn't decide which was better in Gen 8, they both got a point, and these are evenly matched Pokemon that will be rivals until the end of time. Depending on how you look at it though, this question is still up for debate. I mean, Groudon had higher peaks with its primal form, but Kyogre is currently the better one in Gen 9. Maybe you'd value that more. Kyogre is also probably the better one in its base form. If you don't count the primal forms, Kyogre would win it. I think the primal forms are an extension of these Pokemon that should be considered, but if you want to be purely talking about the base form Pokemon, you would probably say Kyogre is superior. But what do you think, folks? Who do you think is the better Pokemon in each generation that they've existed in? And who is your favorite of the two? I'm of course partial to Groudon. I love the Pokemon because I'm very good at pronouncing its name, and I also think it looks great, and it has cool spikes on it and stuff. But what about you? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching.